Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first Conservation and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting of the 24-25 municipal year. Can I please call for any nominations for the Chair of CHAC for the 24-25 municipal year? Any nominations must be proposed and seconded by a member of the committee, please.
I nominate Paul McLaughlin.
Yep.
Seconded.
Great. Are there any objections? No. Any further nominations? No. So, Paul, if you'd like to take the chair, please.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the confidence expressed in it. No, much appreciated. I would like to formally ask it to be recorded our thanks to Chris for his previous 3 years as chairman. Did a sterling job, and it was a pleasure to work with him as vice chair.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. The next item is the let's go over to apologies for absence. You want to do the vice chair?
No, we can take apologies now. So I've got apologies for Councillor Patterson. Please.
Yeah.
We had an apology from Ian Goodwin. Should be.
Yes.
No, I'll note that as well.
He's at medical appointment. Can't make it.
Thank you.
Okay. Declarations of interest. Max,
Green Lane.
Green Lane, Max. I will have to declare an interest in the Liversidge London Road site. Okay. Double election of chair, so election of vice chair.
Yeah.
Yep. I propose that Ian Goodwin takes the position of vice chair.
Second that.
Chris Toomey, second that. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations?
No other nominations? No. Everybody in favour? Yeah. That's great. Thank you.
So we move on to item 6 on the agenda, the election / confirmation of co-opted members. I think Chris Collison is the only co-opted member. He's obviously not here today, so I don't know whether we want to defer that to the next meeting or his absence.
I think
he's keen to carry.
He's keen to carry on. So yeah, I think we just accept that.
So if anyone wants to propose,
Yeah, I'll propose him.
Yeah.
Yep.
I might interpose, Chair, that the Archaeological Society have been in touch with me saying that they're in the process of finding a replacement for Chris Wardle.
Right.
Because I presume we've recorded his resignation, have we?
Not had any correspondence.
They think he's certainly he's told them he's resigned. So it might be something to make a note of. Certainly not being present. They're looking for someone to replace him. I only know because they said whoever it is has to ring me up to find out what to do. That may not be a good idea.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to Lindsay and then we'll follow that up after the meeting.
You. No other co-opted members are there. So moving on to the next item, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of February 2024. You all had a copy of the minutes later. If you're in favour of those. Yeah, everybody in favour. Thank you. Items determined since the last meeting. Chloe, can I refer to you on that? A couple of interest, certainly. One particularly was the assembly room.
applications at 114 million, which were used and committed projected to properties. And the examiner's demolition and conservation area application that was approved and advisory committee budget.
Yeah, thank you. So, items not being considered this meeting, you've all seen the list of the items not being considered. Any comments on those particularly? No? No. Okay, thank you. Right, moving on to the main part of the agenda, items to be considered. We are going to do a slight reorder on the agenda, because I understand, Robert, you need to, and I need to leave earlier as well. So the first on the agenda is the land at the Arboretum Bowls Club, Rose Hill Street. Over 10 new units on the site of the corner of Bowls Green, 7 of which are 2-storey semi-detached, or detached, semi-detached rather, and 3 single-storey units. Obviously, this is right next to the Arboretum itself and was actually part of the Arboretum. It was, the Arboretum, as you know, probably know, was opened in 1840 under the designs of Loudon, John Claudius Loudon. The bowling green and associated works were added only 2 years after the opening of the Arboretum. So it is very much an intrinsic part of the Arboretum itself, and as such should be considered. I believe the use as a bowling green ceased in 2005, and it was left to dereliction by the City Council over a period of time. And I think in 2015, the pavilion to the bowling green was demolished because it was unsafe. I don't think that any formal applications were made about that at the time, which there should have been consultations to the appropriate consultation taking place. Over to you, Chloe, to explain this.
Just to add to what you just said, just a few slides just to cover the element where the Arboretum will be in the city, and a couple of podcasts which consider the party application pack showing its location adjacent to the listed lodge and the listed railings, and the access into that particular part. And mentioned was being ready to start, and that's really important so that park can go on. So these photographs just show the area and its context. This is the existing proposed layout. Obviously the semi-detached properties that run along Rose Hill Street are proposed to be set back. And then access to the room to the bungalows behind the associated with these. So you were seeing when you looked online on the details of the materials proposed for the houses, escaping retail. You see the visuals showing things. This is
Okay, thank you. But as you can see, scheme Architecturally, I think is a little bit disappointing, but I'll open it up for broader comment. Carol.
This was a specific designated area for recreation under the council's policy. So whether we consider the plan or not, surely this is a protected area.
I believe, yeah, I think your interpretation is right, but it is the city council who own it, who have put the designation on it in the first place. So they obviously deem it. I mean, one has to say that the area is deficient in quality housing, but whether this is the right location for it is down to some debate. Yeah. Chris.
I think it's a pretty important site, this one, and I think the scheme's luster. I think there are a few issues with it. It kind of the drawings lack subtlety and quality in terms of showing the scheme properly in context. I think in terms of layout, you kind of lose that whole sense of openness of the site at the moment, and it seems to be dominated by cars and parking and the road, and there is a kind of token open space, but the houses don't really make there's no great sense of place here promised. Seems to be loss of some trees as well, which is regrettable, particularly given the context. And I think in terms of the quality of the buildings, the materials are not really what you'd expect. So, new PVC windows and concrete roof tiles in a setting such as this. So I think there's an issue with compromising the open space, impact on the setting of the listed lodge. I did wonder, it's not for us to suggest other things, but and also the relationship to the road is problematic in that everything's kind of turning its back. And I know there's trees on that fringe, but it seems to me to be, disappointing. I wondered if there may have been an opportunity to, if you look at the historic maps, there were buildings to the, is it the west side, Chloe, the other side to the lodge? Maybe there's an opportunity for a simple contemporary terrace that then frames that space properly, fronts that properly, to create something that kind of means something. But it just feels like there may be an opportunity for a very high quality housing scheme here, but this doesn't appear to be it.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Max.
I do, bearing in mind that this is the Arboretum's Grade 2 listed park, so it is star listed park. Although that doesn't bestow upon it any statutory protection, we really shouldn't be the applicant should not be even thinking about developing on a piece of it. It sets a very bad principle. We have other listed parks within the city boundary, which so it sets a very poor precedent. In my opinion, the City Council should be looking actively, or should have been looking actively since 2005, at reintegrating this piece of land into the rest of the park by removing the fence that divides it and doing a spot of inexpensive landscaping and thinking about putting affordable housing somewhere a little less prominent. That said, I endorse everything Chris has said about the quality of the scheme, which is pretty fifth rate, especially as it affects the setting of a listed Grade 2 lodge house, which it is very adjacent to. That's all I have to say about it.
Anybody else? Robert?
I'd support all his comments, really. I think that if you accepted that there had to be residential on this site, the points that Max was making, it could be done so much better. And the clue is right there with the lovely lodge, isn't it? You know, and the clues for the design could be taken from that. And you could imagine something that had a sort of almshouse quality to it, something fairly sort of simple but respectful of its context. The bungalows are very curious with the kind of monopitch, sort of semi-industrial kind of aesthetic, and I wonder whether in the design and access statement there's any justification for that. It seems very peculiar. So I'd encourage the applicant to look at examples of almshouses in the area and look carefully at the listed lodge.
Okay, thank you.
Paul?
So, sorry, Sue.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say the points that I've noted down is that I felt in terms of the design could do better was the expression that came to mind in terms of certainly in terms of the materials and so on. I understand the need for housing, and you know, if this does go ahead, then I think that design is unsuitable in the context of the lodge and so on. And totally unsympathetic to the historical setting in my view.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in summary then, it's a forceful objection on behalf of the committee to the redevelopment of this space. The fact that the applicant seems to be treating it as a secondary space to the Arboretum is totally inaccurate and should be properly addressed as being part of the overall Arboretum. The impact of the new build on the listed lodge is also totally inappropriate. The materials and the general design of the new building is also inappropriate for its setting context with the Grade 2 listed park. That's a reasonable summation. Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the Liversidge Almshouse, at which point I'll hand over to you, Chris.
Okay, well,
Okay, bring it back.
while you're getting yourself ready, Chloe, you should welcome Councillor, is it Larkin or Lakin? Lakin. Yeah, good to have you here. Thank you very much for joining the committee. Councillor Patterson should have been here, but isn't, we understand, so gave apologies.
He did, yeah.
Joining too, so good to have some fresh blood to see you.
I hope I can add something positive.
I'm sure, yeah, thank you. Chloe.
So this is a planning application, full planning application for the change of use and refurbishment of units, which are number 6, 6A and 6B, which is part of buildings, as well as external refurbishment to a number of other units. So everyone's aware of where these buildings are and maybe the information, and I've just put the slide on. It's clear when we're talking about building A, it's the one that's fronting London Road, and then obviously there's a green space within the middle, and so building B is adjacent to that. It might take us to building A, and then there's building C behind. These are all Grade 2 listed buildings. The applications relate to those 3 blocks of buildings which were built circa 1836. There's a number of works being proposed. Going into the detail. So there are proposals. So this proposal is for removing existing roof tiles, adding insulation above existing plaster work, so re-roofing and repairing and relaying the existing and using new tiles, refurbishment of rainwater goods, repointing and repairs, cleaning using a DOF system of external stone and brickwork where needed, removal of external surface mounted foul water to be rerouted within the houses rather than to the exteriors. Windows, within the information that these are going to be refurbished with the addition of secondary glazing added. External doors are to be redecorated. There are external slabs to create a level for access. Additional of internal wall linings and insulation together with linings of ceilings with insulating board. In effect, on a number of these properties there, on a block A and B, they are connecting two properties into one, making a larger space, and removing a number of original staircases in each double unit and trimming of existing yarn-mesh floors. So these slides just illustrate the buildings that we're talking about. You receive these within the application information. So relevant detail in terms of the treatment to windows and doors to each part of these buildings. So this is building A on the right hand side, the elevation facing London Road, and there's the same sort of level of detail in the rear of the elevation. Internally, you will see the existing layouts, the proposed demolition plan, which is proposing, well, you can see on the slides the extent of that, and the proposed layout. Obviously, that's at ground floor level, and obviously at the first floor level also. So there are some photographs within the information that show the sort of size and spaces of the existing and the winder staircases. I'm sure you have seen. So this information just goes through a bit more detail, and in addition to the information, we saw some information has been submitted on insulation. This is specifically to do with building B, but I think obviously this is a which would be expected as part of application for the other buildings as well. And that's on each building, but that gives probably a summary of building A and B. Building C is quite different and was thought to be a possible former chapel. And having been inside the building, there are church-like elements, and having looked in the loft, there were very large decorative vents, which is currently can't see because of the suspended ceilings in the building. So I think that's sort of a summary, but I could go into a lot more detail.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Chloe. Yeah, so I mean, really charming, attractive little set piece along London Road. There's been a bit of change over the years, but this is a quite significant change. So it seems that decision has been made that the units, which are quite compact, are too small and need to be knocked two into one. So each of them has its little winder stair in the corner. So the idea is that every other one of those will be removed, so they will keep a winder stair in the units as essentially won't be used. It will be a store, but it will be retained as a sort of memory of what was there before. But that's what they're proposing to in order to sort of create more generous units. So and there's quite a lot of change associated with that, including some blocking up of doors, Chloe, too, aren't there?
Yes, front elevation.
On the front elevation, yeah. Yeah. So that's what's on the table as it stands. Seems there's been a bit of dialogue with Historic England along the way in terms of the degree of change that may be acceptable. But comments, please. Anyone?
Well, I suppose by the sound of it, Chloe, there's not a huge amount of change on the outside.
Not really, no, because the windows and doors are going to be refurbished. There is the odd UPVC which are going to be replaced with something more appropriate. And yeah, so that's the extent of it. A little bit of cleaning and some repairs and repairs to the room.
Given how I think on the positive side, it's great that it's being adapted to modern life
with the same use.
With the same use.
Ongoing and serving as
it's actually a pretty good reference point for the previous scheme, ironically.
Yeah, very true.
And the changes are internal, where there's been, clearly over time, the only sort of residential use there's going to be that anyway, isn't there? So my view is, that if the true test of building's value is adaptability, then building is showing it's capable of absorbing change, which is good.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Anybody else?
Objection.
No objections, Steve?
No objections?
No.
Okay, that's no objections. Yeah, yeah. Oh, thanks, Carol. Yeah. Good thinking. Always forget. So thoughtful.
So moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is number 1, Cathedral Green. Members will recall that we've had this before. We made comment on it previously, and if you'll forgive me, I'm just going to go through a resume of what was said previously. We acknowledge that there was an approval given in 2014. The current proposals exceed the height of that building, the approved building, from 7 to 9 stories. There are also change of materials proposed, and the plant, M&E plant area set on the roof was taken into consideration as well. The difference in height between the last scheme and the previous approved scheme was 4.1 metres overall. The site sits on the edge of the city centre conservation area, and the committee believed at the time that the conservation area, the Grade 1 listed cathedral, Silt Mill, will all be adversely affected by the current proposals, previous proposals which we looked at. Reference is also made to the tall building strategy, Derby City Council, where supporting information was included in respect of that. The height and proximity to the World Heritage Site was also discussed at length, and it was believed that it was a severe threat to the World Heritage status and would cause irreversible harm to the skyline and the setting of the historic buildings. The proposal was believed not to comply with the strategy put forward by the International Council on Monuments and Sites. So whether that's been re-referenced since, I don't know. The facade treatment, whilst being reasonably well considered, we thought was formulaic and lacked depth and articulation, particularly in relation to the expression of the vertical elements within the facade. The corner element, which is described in the application as a tower, we felt the interpretation of that was more akin to a block rather than a tower. We also expressed concern that the proposal doesn't work well at ground level and is poorly integrated to Cathedral Green itself, and that the public space on Cathedral Green would actually be adversely affected by shade because of the height and mass of the building. I think that sort of generally sums up what was said previously. We have had a letter, which I think is on the website, from Derby Civic Society via Ian Goodwin. I'd just like to go through the salient points on that, on the advice scheme, unless you want to go through the advice scheme first, and then I'll read this after.
Certainly. So there's a number of slides which we're just going through previous and the location, so won't go over those again. And obviously visuals. So these are proposed, how it relates to the cathedral, but I'm trying to get to, this is part of the proposed design, which we can come back to. Within the design and access statement, there's, on the website, you'll have noticed there's a list of all the different changes to the proposals, which includes increase in size of commercial units.
That's an old one.
The 8th floor is proposed to be set back 1.5 metre and adjusting to the curtain walling. There's a clad element introduced adjacent to existing apartment building with a storey removed. And you'll have seen there's quite a list of different changes in terms of both the plans and the height and the configuration in terms of pushing that 8th floor back. And there's a number of tweaks to the elevations also. So you'll have seen that on the line. In the design access statement, one thing which I thought was quite helpful was a number of improved plan or visual, which was top left. The planning submission as you saw it last time is the top right, and then the currently revised planning submission bottom right in all of these visuals that I'm going to run through quickly. So I thought in terms of what's happened and what the visual impact might be, well, this was a way of summarising. So you can sort of see the changes between the top right and top left. So this is looking along Fall Street. Once again, in terms of a particular angle, looking along Fall Street, with that top floor being pushed back, and that the visual impact again. So the changes, possibly noticed one of the things was the reduction in floor to ceiling heights has been carried out to try and reduce it. Also the way in which so I think you can
Yeah.
Not date.
No, that's most helpful, Chloe. Thank you. So in summary, the overall height of the building has actually been reduced by 1.6 metres. And that's been achieved by reducing the floor to floor heights within the building. The service floor, which is on top, has been set back further. So the impact of that has also reduced the overall mass of the building. It's interesting to note also that the actual number of units has increased. This is due to the fact that they've actually changed the number of single bed units, increased that and reduced the number of 2-bed units. So it's pretty quite well. You'll have noticed from the planning documentation that Historic England seem to have withdrawn their objection now. However, the Derwent Valley Mills World Heritage Site and the Cathedral and the Civic Trust will maintain and reinforce their objections. I do have a letter from the Civic Society, which I'll just briefly read out to. In our opinion, our comprehensive letter of objection dated 7th of November 23 stands despite the changes made by the applicant and their design team to the original application. Although a previous application was approved for a residential building on the site of a similar height, we think the proposed latest design is so different from the Phase 2 Wilson Bowden proposal, it cannot possibly be used as a precedent. The proposed building will have the vertical proportions of a brick-built mill building, rather like Melbourne North Mill. It bears no relation to the modern materials and lightweight construction of the Phase 1 development. That is why we and many other bodies whose role it is to give an opinion on such matters believe that the proposed building would be over-dominant on this site and would do irretrievable damage to the setting of Derby's prime heritage assets. It's disappointing that the developers have done so little to address these widely shared concerns in their latest proposals. The height of the building has been reduced by about 5% by reducing the floor to ceiling heights, which are less than that recommended by the GLC of 2.75 metres. That, together with the step back top floor, are minor changes, which in our view do not have the impact we were hoping. I think that sort of sums up the Civic Society. So can I open it up to discussion?
Can I ask, Chairman, is there an official response from ICOMOS concerning their visit to this site when related to it?
I don't think there is. No.
It's not very helpful, is it?
No.
Well, I think we should make the same objection as we did last time, word for word, practically.
Yeah.
I think it is unthinkable to build anything so large in such a sensitive position. I mean, the City Council did us all a wonderful favour years ago when the power station was demolished, which might be taken as a precedent, and indeed is in the Heritage Statement, which is a very strange document, a work of fiction if ever I read one. But the City Council decreed that the space it occupied would remain an open space to the river. This scheme does no favours to that gesture at all, or anything else. I think we should stick to the same objection.
Okay. Yeah. Any more comments, Susan?
Yes, I don't share the view of the majority of the committee, I don't think, but and that's mainly because that original application to me would be far less welcome than this one. And if this doesn't proceed, then is there a danger that we're going to revert to the previous plan?
Well, there is that danger because that hasn't valid approval, does it not? Still
This committee did object to that scheme.
we did
Yeah.
strongly.
Yeah.
But it exists, you know, it is there.
It is a possibility, yeah.
Yeah, and that's my worry, really.
What you don't want is a 1960s cocktail cabinet bar built on the same site, which is what it looks like. I see your point.
Yeah.
I think we should still fight.
So I'm new to this, but I'd be curious to know what's driving 195. Is it a need in the city, or is it open market, or is it sort of affordable? You know, is it aimed at a particular group of people, students, young people?
I think it's general market, isn't it? Yeah.
Open market.
Open market. Yeah.
So what's the general understanding about what's driving 195? Is it a case of how many can we get on the site, or is it a perceived need?
I think it's probably driven by, I mean, not had this from the developer, but I think it probably is driven by we can get on the site. That's it in many cases.
I mean, I do agree with the general sentiment that the architectural language that's being adopted is better than the 2013 version, because it does at least hark back to, you know, some sort of Derwent Valley heritage, you know, brick mill type building. But I think it's the scale really that's of concern.
I think the like you and Sue, I think the materials are probably more appropriate, and actually Historic England actually refer back saying that they're in favour of those materials over the previous one. But I think it's the articulation and the expression, the depth of shadows that needs to be the key on the design of this building. And at the moment, that doesn't seem to be there. Chris?
Yeah, I think, as we said before, the scale and mass and sort of density of the whole thing is problematic on such a sensitive site. I think, and unfortunately, when you get into this discussion about height, it becomes okay, we'll take it down a bit, and there's a lot of work goes into demonstrating that is lower than it was last time we saw it, but it kind of misses the point, doesn't it? That I think you've got a very kind of heavy, impactful solution here, and also in terms of the quality of the spaces, those kind of units on the back that look into the courtyard seem pretty mean, so it doesn't feel like it's offering anything
very much
special, given its riverside location, and it's in fantastic. This is such an opportunity site.
I think
clearly it's not. Something needs to happen there, because it's becoming a problem. But I think it's still the scale and mass of the whole thing, and the absence of meaningful public benefit. So this could be making a contribution to Cathedral Green in terms of use and activity, and it's not really doing that. So at ground floor level, it's just apartments looking out onto the space. I think there's one commercial unit on the corner under the tower, which looks a bit hopeful and isolated. So yeah, I think coming around to saying what we said before, really.
I think the fact that the design review panel actually seemed to consider that increasing the height for the sake of improving the expression of architecture in it is a bit of a key. I don't agree with the increasing height, but
I read that with interest. I think I mean I kind of get the point, but I think it's probably misleading, because I think we should move away from anything that suggests it should be taller. But clearly there are concerns about quality of architectural resolution, aren't there, that they're talking about, I guess.
So I think in essence then we just reinforce what we said previously. I'm sorry, Carol.
I think people have missed the fact that is so close to the cathedral, and we seem to be concentrating on the designs, which I know previously had been given permission. But you think of the poor cathedral, and it breaks my heart to see this sort of design adjacent to our cathedral. And I don't know whether the Dean's put in an objection again, but that to me, I do like the brickwork and I actually quite like the design, but I think it's the wrong height. And it's so close to the cathedral that I feel it's not appropriate, and I would object just because it was so close to the cathedral.
In many ways, it's so close to coming up with a reasonable solution.
Yes.
A bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is another worry, Mr. Chairman, that if a developer comes forward with a scheme for Armin Alley car park, and after all, 20 years ago, we were discussing schemes for it all the time.
Yeah, which I.
If this one gets consent, that will set an appalling precedent, and because they will want to take that as a cue for the bulk of any new development there. I think that's a problem, and I also think that the reason the number of units has been increased is, I suspect that they actually want to get consent and then sell it on, as has happened before. I think that just attract it's commercial ploy.
Not really for us to.
Nothing to. No, it's not
Has to say in defence of the developer, their track record is good.
Generally, it is.
GRI and now with Frygate Goodyard.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they do seem to have Derby at their heart rather than chasing the dollar. But I agree. So yeah, I think we reiterate our previous comments. Encourage them to come back with a slightly more refined design and lesser height.
Are there any sort of clues from, I often think in terms of these cities like Manchester and Liverpool that you visit and you see, the new buildings integrated into the existing historic buildings, and they seem to do it so well. Is there anything that we can add or suggest in terms of?
Not that I'm particularly aware, but when you're comparing it to the likes of Manchester, the scale of the building, the fabric, general massing there tends to be larger anyway.
Yes,
where Derby is set in the dip. And anything you put in there, because we've resisted it for so long, and rightfully so, is going to have a severe impact. And put that against the fact that we've got the cathedral and a very important aspect over Derby to the river. It just adds to reinforce that.
And those two cities are 4 times the size of Derby,
Well, indeed,
which makes it easier to integrate. And if you've seen the caseload of the Georgian group's caseworker for Liverpool, you'd realise that they've had appalling trouble, and they've had much more demolition than we've had. And he tells me it's enough to make you feel suicidal.
Okay, Claire.
A big no.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is repaying. Max, if you.
I'm on my way.
Okay.
This is these applications for the installation and replacement, some replacement windows, removal of bay window, and reinstatement of the original window and opening, removal of internal partitions, reinstatement of original plaster features, and installation of new internal partitions. Should just say yes, this is within the Green Lane conservation area, Green Lane conservation area, and so it's at the end of the row, and you can see the current bay window, and that bay window is supposed to be removed. There is some structural defects, and some of it has come away. So here's the existing and proposed elevations. So that's the main proposal in terms of the front elevation. So it's focused mainly on that bay windows. To the side elevation, there is an existing high level second floor window. It's just been missed off the existing, but it is boarded up inside. So when we look at the plans in a moment, we probably would have noticed if we looked at the information online, it's boarded up on the inside, but you can see it on the exterior. And then to the rear, most of the works are in relation to repairs to windows and window replacement. The extent to which is not fully known. So there are some windows that need some care and attention and some repairs, and that's what they're hoping to do. However, there is likely to be some replacement of parts. If they again say if you need to do something. So just in terms of the bay window, there's a thorough heritage statement, and that talks about that the bay window was in the Eastlands edition. And originally, as you can see on the historic plan, there was sort of shared entrances, but yet the original design intent is very much symmetrical. So just looking at the bay itself, you can see the issues, and you can see the render behind some of it, which has actually come away. And then at the other end, you can see the detail of the mouldings and sills, etc., which has been proposed to be replicated in this location. So there are a number of floors, and the lower ground floor is accessible. And so what we've got here is you've seen in the application the existing layout, the historic layout, and the proposed layout. So on this floor, there were more units. We have that many, and so that's what so it highlights the windows that we have. So that's yet. There's the removal of what looks to be an arch, and there was an internal window for borrowed light. This is just an aperture. So this is the quality of the space, and this is an example of a lift. And that isn't actually the building itself. Here are some examples of the windows and the it's going to be needed. To the ground floor, there has been some change to the initial plans that were online. So they're now looking at a communal dining room to the rear with no subdivision. Because previously there was a bathroom, which obviously because of the high window, the size of the windows, having a pod to accommodate really out visually, cutting through it would have been quite difficult. So there's a communal room to the rear, one of the HMO bedrooms to the front. They're now easily giving space within that front room. So there's some general photographs, some of which can be seen online, in terms of where the pod has been proposed. This is a communal room where no changes are proposed now, and this is the inside of the bay window, which is proposed to be removed. First floor, you can see a number in red, there are existing walls. And the proposal is to move those existing walls slightly and accommodate WC shower pod and area to linear movement of BBC. So the vegetables. Once again, I'm moving to the pods in relation to the window. That's not to be attention to that. And the second floor, there's very little proposed in the kitchen, 2 kitchen areas within those studios. The WCs are already in situ. And that's a quick summary.
Okay. Thank you, Claire. So obviously we've got the various internal alterations. Sorry, just one point of clarification. You've been to look at the building, and I know when you were talking to the applicants, you said that they were going to consider moving that petition back to align with the existing wall. Had any further response on that?
On site, they said that they would review it with their architect. Well, it was the revised plans and it didn't accommodate those changes.
So to assume that they are not going to make those. It just seems a very small adjustment to a wall for the sake of keeping an existing piece of historic fabric. Okay, so the external alterations is the relates to the bay window at the front, which, as you saw from the photographs, is a fairly poor state of repair. So the question really is, should it be returned to how it was originally with the sash window and the surround as per the rest of the bay, or should it retain the bay as a statement of its evolution over time? So open it up to a bit of discussion.
Well, to me, it seems reasonable to restore it back to how it was, and given that the bay was added on, it's not particularly well detailed bay window. That is it.
No.
Do you agree, Chris?
I agree with that. Yeah, I do. I think that sounds fine to me.
Yeah.
I also agree in relation to the questions about moving the walls. It seems that you're so close to the wall alignment that it doesn't seem worth knocking down a wall to move it literally 4 inches or something. That seems to be all that's being achieved. It looks like there could be less intervention there to get the same result.
Yeah.
Other than that, it seems fine.
That's liking. You're happy with that?
Yes, absolutely.
So, yeah. Aaron, any comments?
I think the restoration of the flat sash window would probably look aesthetically more pleasing for the row than having the bay was an oddity, really. So yes, I'm happy with that, really.
So I think the general consensus is clear that we're happy with the proposals, but if you would go back to them and ask them if they can just tweak the position of that wall just to save that for the historic fabric, I think the still happy. You mentioned something about the pods over the sailing windows. Can we just make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you can suggest is taken into, is progressed.
Yeah. And the other thing is that clearly you will want to see a large scale detail of the new window and surround, so to make sure it replicates. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Could I just ask Chloe something? Chloe, I know the windows are yet to be decided on, but the very rear on the lower ground floor where a door was punched through, do you feel that there is a need for another sash window or just a very plain piece of glass which is there already?
Sure of what to go. Obviously, because it was a door previously, there are different ways that you can do that. So I think it just needs to actually read that it was part of the door. With glazing to the top part of it. Well, there's a number of different ways that it could be done. But I thought, because it's such a small aperture, to actually have a sash in there wouldn't look right. Yeah. So, but
To keep it plain glass, perhaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so there is some scope to look at different approaches.
But are you going to discuss that with the owners anyway?
It is something because I don't think that's been fully pinned down yet. But we'd expect clarification on which windows are being repaired and replaced, as well as the design for any definite new ones, which this is an obvious candidate.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda is number 100 St Chad's Road, Stonehill House, grade 2 listed. The application relates to replacement of and repairs to existing windows. I think some of the windows have actually fallen out, and you'll have seen on the website that the photographs of the splashed pane on the ground, etc. So, Chloe, can you give us a brief resume, please?
So the numbering of the windows goes up to 20, but there isn't an item 9. So there's roughly 20 windows, where some of which are being replaced and some of which are being repaired. We've done quite a bit in those 2 years. They've done a thorough survey of which elements on which window need replacing. So obviously looking at the front elevation, the proposals wasn't addressing the casement that has been put in front, nor replacing the lower elements. So the elevations show the proposals. So these are the front elevation, the side. So here we've got what the existing elevation looks like and the other proposals. And the side. There are some slight points of tuning on some of the window details, for example, which placements into the basements and wounded, sort of level. But there is a drawing like this for each window on a number of them. They're keeping the majority of the window, so the box itself, and just replacing maybe 1 or 2 of the sliding parts. And there are a few complete replacements, but they've looked into it in such detail that they've tried to really reduce it down to the ones that really need looking at. So that's a very quick.
Yeah,
summary.
That's great. Thank you, Chloe. So yeah, replacement of windows. The details that have been provided clearly reflect what we like to see in terms of replacement. The fact that they're retaining the existing sash boxes and just putting in new parts which are deemed necessary, I think is applaudable. And the casement windows around the back, I think, are all flush casement windows, or they're not going. So I don't think there's any. There was one detail I seem to remember seeing that was a stormproof type window,
Yeah,
which
I think that's right, yes.
I'd like to discourage that. But generally, I think it's a good move forward for the building, particularly if we can also convince them that the casement window is on the middle row, left-hand side, is put back as a sash, and the 8/8 arrangement on the bottom, on the ground floor as well, would be very positive. So anybody else got any comments? Nope.
That's like necessary work to me.
Well, yes, and it is a problem building in that area. So I think those comments were.
So can I just check, that's no objection, subject to change of those windows?
Yes, for the
For the front.
8/8 and the casement, just to make sure the rear windows are flush.
Yeah. Yep, thank you.
Okay. So Leeds Place, 5 Leeds Place is no longer on the agenda. That's been taken off and approved. They were just simple placement windows again, following very much the pattern of that previous application. So that brings us to the end of the session we considered. The next item to talk about is the George Rennie Heritage Awards for 2022-23. The decision we've got to make here is whether we delay it for another year and have a better range of buildings to judge against, rather than how many have we got actually to consider? Is it four?
Well, there's different categories, aren't there? So there's usually a winner, highly commended. You can have up to 2 highly commended. So there's a lot of different categories, which I think I've listed out in your.
Perhaps we're looking potentially, if we do have it this year, at doing the presentations in either July or August.
Obviously, it would be useful to kick off with this meeting to have nominations.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Yeah, and then next meeting is the July one, I think. So it'd be nice to if you are going ahead with an award ceremony this year, sort of fine tune those. And I think if there are any nominations in between now and I can get some people send me photographs, and we can look at them at the next meeting. And then it would be setting up an award ceremony, because the next meeting after that is late August.
Yeah.
And then the other one is the October one.
Well, I think August would be the better meeting if we can do it. So really what I'm saying is, could you have a look and see if there are any buildings or schemes or improvements, repairs, etc., that are worth forward, so we could consider them. And if there aren't, then I think the decision to delay it for another year will come in the next period. That'd be the best way forward. Okay. Right. Okay, any other business? Anybody got anything to raise, Max?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Chloe if she can inform us about what is happening with regard to the fire damage listed grade 2 Melbourne House, Osmaston Road, also in a conservation area? Have you any news?
Check into
I mean, have they done anything since the fire?
not as far as I know, but I have been in contact with the owner.
Well, seriously,
Mm.
it's a particularly fine house.
Anything else? Right? No? Okay.
Thanks.
Right, okay. Then,